Hi guys, welcome back. This is your next video on using methods on the canvas. And for those of you who are in software engineering 2, it's going to be really familiar because we are going to be remaking like a super simplified version of that drawing application that you guys made way back when. For people who are not in software 2, you are welcome to go look at the student examples and some of the other things that are in your weekly work because that'll just help you get an idea of where we are going. And you can also be grateful that you got to bypass like a lot of extra code by learning to do this with classes, objects, and methods instead. Once you guys are ready, please make sure you duplicate the code that is in the weekly work. It is just like the blank code with Collide 2D linked. We're not going to be using Collide 2D today, but we will be using it tomorrow as we get into making buttons. So once you are there, you're welcome to give this a better name. I am probably not going to save this because I have like several of these kicking around in my P5. But give it a better name like 2.3.1 draw application or whatever, just so that you know what it is. And then you can get ready to get started. So very much like before, make sure your screen is set up so you can see my video, you can see your code. Remember, you can pause, slow down, rewatch, whatever. And then meet me down where the draw function ends, which in my code right now is around line 13. I'm going to bounce down underneath that, so I am outside the draw function, and I'm just going to make another note that classes go below this line. And again, that is just for me to keep track of where things are, so if I do need to come back and edit any of these classes or update any of these classes, I know where things are. Now in this particular program, we have a goal in mind. I would like to be able to draw on the screen with my mouse, and I would also like to make it so that when I click some of the buttons that we'll be making eventually, the thing I'm drawing with changes. So it turns like a different color, it looks different, it's just nicer. In order to draw on the canvas before I even make my classes, I'm going to go ahead and take my background and I'm going to move it up here. And I'm also just going to get rid of this text function for now because I don't need it. I'm going to hit play, I'm going to make sure everything works right, and then I'm going to get ready to make my class. So today, we're going to be making a class where we are just going to make one object from that class, and I know some of you are sitting there thinking, we learned about classes so we can make multiples. Classes are great for multiples, they're great for dealing with repetition, but they're also just great for managing complexity generally. With this drawing tool that's on the screen, I want to have a lot of variables that I can adjust for it. I want it to have like a color and a stroke weight, and maybe one day I want to have different options of what I can draw with. Maybe I want to draw with a line one day and an ellipse one day and a rectangle one day. I want all of those available to me, and so rather than making lots of variables and dealing with things that are kind of scattered all over the place, I'm going to keep them in this class object, and I'm just going to refer back to the object to change things. So the first class that we'll be making together is a brush class. Brush is what I'm referring to that I'm drawing on the screen with. And similar to like the random walker you guys saw yesterday, you are more than welcome to update this kind of to your liking. I am just going to do a most type basic version with you guys today so you can get the hang of it. So on line 17, I'm going to make a class called brush. I'm going to make my curly braces for defining the class, and then I'm going to go in and make my constructor. And for this particular example, I don't think my constructor is going to take a lot in. I think I'm going to set a lot of default settings. But again, if you'd like to change that, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to say that this brush needs to have a thickness that's going to start at 5. It needs to have a brush color, which is going to start at black, I guess. Please notice, because I know we haven't practiced this a ton this year, when I'm setting colors, colors also go in as an object function, or they go in as a function that returns an object for the color. I need to put in color and then the 3 numbers after it, which are always out of 255, 0, 0, 0 being black. It has a thickness, it has a color. What else might I want this to have right away? I'm going to say the option is line, and I'm not really going to use that yet, but I'll talk about it a little bit at the end. And that's it. That's my constructor right there. Later on, there might be more that I add to this, but this is going to get me set up right away. And I can go about making a new brush for myself. So I'm going to make a variable called the brush, so I differentiate it from the class by calling it the brush. And then in setup, I'm going to say that the brush is equal to a new brush, and it doesn't take anything in. And if I hit play, nothing happens. Life is very boring. So down underneath this constructor, let's go ahead and make a display function, or like, I'm going to call it paint. I'm going to make a paint function. My paint function is going to allow my brush to shoop all over the screen. So what I would like to have happen is I want this to be a line. And some of you may recall from last year, I can draw lines to show up where my mouse is, but I need to not just use mouse X and mouse Y, I also need to use these two variables called pMouseX and pMouseY. For people who are new to this, it's not a super big deal. pMouseX and pMouseY are just the previous position of my mouse. So because the draw function runs over and over and over, 60 times per second, it's wherever my mouse was in the last frame. That's it. And it's okay if it doesn't make a ton of sense to you, but I'm going to have pMouseX, pMouseY, mouse X, mouse Y, and that should be enough to get this painting. In my draw function, if I say thebrush.paint and I hit play, it will now let me doodle all over the screen. Now, this is all fine and good, but this is not the brush I set out to have. I want this to be more interesting. So I'm going to update this paint function, and I'm going to say that the line should have a stroke weight of this dot thickness, and it should have a stroke, lines do not have a fill, they only have a stroke, of this dot brush color. And now when I hit play, it's still going to be black, but it's now like a thick line. And if I were to change one of these color values, like to red, for example, now it's a red line, change it back to black. But now interesting things are happening. There's lots of ways I could start updating this. So, for example, I could say in my function that it will only draw if my mouse is pressed. So inside my paint method, I could put a conditional that, like, if mouse is pressed, all this stuff should happen so that this only takes place when I'm clicking. I could also say that all of this only happens if this dot option is the same as line. So that later maybe I have an option called like rectangle or circle that I can update this dot option to so it draws different things. But right now, this is enough to get me drawing on the canvas, and this is enough to give me something that I can update, and I can play with these values a little later on to make interesting things happen. That's all you guys are doing for today, so please make sure you save this and meet me back tomorrow when we start making buttons and start making this program interesting. Again, feel free to update this if you wish. It is completely up to you. Good luck, and I will see you tomorrow.